You're listening to the Freio
Music Podcast.
To the Freio Music
Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Freio Music Podcast. In this episode, I sit down with Will Sheehan, aka Wilbow, in Denver, Colorado, where we discuss his music, how he's created it, where he chooses his samples, and much, much more. Wilbow, Willbeaux.
My name is Will Sheehan. I go by Willbeaux. If you see me on the street, you can just call me Wilbow. That's what everyone calls me.
Nice. And where are you from, Wilbow?
Aretha, California. It's this small town right outside of Oakland, East Bay area.
Let's start out way back.
Way back.
What is your first musical memory?
That's a great question because we'll probably tie this back in later. But my mother cleaning the house and bumping soul, Motown, Aretha Franklin, was definitely getting used to that at a very young age. She's probably first beginnings of my love for music. After that, she showed me little guy known as Bob Marley, and Queen. And, you know, everyone's parents shows them their first music, and so that was mine.
What was it about the music that you remember or that stuck out? Was it the vocals? Was it the rhythm?
Oh,
did your mom sing along?
Definitely. I'm not someone to listen to lyrics. I love a good voice, of course, but it's always been the rhythm, the beat, and the drums. She must have saw something in me because she made me take up drums, you know, when I was like 9 or 10. And that's what I was doing. They bought me bongos, a full drum set, and I was banging on that stuff at a young age. And in middle school, we started a punk band. I wasn't really that into punk, but my friends were, so we would cover Bad Religion, stuff like that, and then we would also cover easy songs like Weezer, things like that. So that was my first time getting into music in general, is doing that.
And where would you guys play?
At just a local music school. We would come together there and then have one guy sit in and kind of help us along practicing, and then if it's not there, it's at my house because I can't move my drum set. As a 12-year-old, I can't move it around places. So those were the only two places we played. I would like to say that we played shows at our school, but there was another band there. I forget what they were called. We Were the Chunks. There was another band there that was better than us, so they got all the lunchtime gigs.
Oh, the lunchtime prime spot.
Yeah.
And that was middle school?
Yeah, middle school.
Oh, that's funny. That's great. So what you were playing drums. What else? What other instruments, or how many people were there?
Just 3 of us, man. The talent was Keith Riley. He played bass and vocals. He's still in a band to this day. And then another guy, Mike Trumbo, he was playing guitar. It'd be so funny if they listen to this. I don't talk to them anymore, but they would love the shout out.
Nice. Well, you got to start somewhere, and it's nice having good buddies that play. So was there a school program that you guys were involved with?
I mean, they were playing guitar. So back then there wasn't much for guitar players, but I was in band. Just playing snare drum. Snare drum, maybe a little bass drum, but it was weird, man. Thinking back to that, I wish I I mean, no one can really focus at that age, but I wish I was more focused on it. I just kind of went through the motions at that time. And I always loved music more than the rest of my friends. I always collected all the CDs that they would burn off me, but they weren't into it. Those two guys were not really in my friend group, and my friend group was into lacrosse and football and stuff. So it kind of died out by the time I got to high school, unfortunately.
So you kind of, it was like a little kindling of a fire.
Yeah,
got started.
It was, and I still use those skills today that I learned in middle school and even before that. I go back to those beats all the time.
And your reduction of music playing in high school is interesting because it's harder to get it started again. So when did you really pick it back up?
Yeah.
After high school.
So freshman year of college, I got cut from the lacrosse team. Obviously very upset at the time, but looking back, it was a blessing in disguise. I absolutely fell in love with hip hop like that you can't even imagine. I was walking home listening, had just discovered To Reasonable Doubt by Jay-Z, the album, and I remember walking down the sidewalk and I stopped in my tracks when I heard one of the songs on there. I don't remember which one, but I fell in love with hip hop. I absolutely dove into like datpiff.com, got into all those mixtape artists and listened to music that came out, when I was, from the 90s and beyond, and got into all that. And then
let me slow you down real quick.
Yeah.
What struck or what made you stop in your tracks when you were listening to the song?
I don't know.
Was it the
thinking
sound?
back, it was the overall sound. Like I said, I don't really listen to lyrics that much, but it was the beat. I didn't know this at the time, but it was the instrumental. It was the instrumental of the beat, and Jay-Z added, an amazing addition to the songs, but it was the old soul samples that I recognized from my mom, and that's when I got into producers like Ninth Wonder, DJ Premier, and that's what struck me. And then from there, it blossomed into electronic music after that. But yeah.
Nice. So in college, were you making music? Were you recording?
Yeah.
How were you cultivating your musicianship?
I started out with all I knew how to because I didn't have software for anything. A friend by the name of Will Cornell, he's still doing music in Seattle under the moniker 1800. He was a hip hop producer, and we became friends, and I was like, hey, send me some beats. I'm going to try to rap. So I did, and I worked really hard at it. And he was like, he told me he had never met anyone work so hard on music before. And I was never really good, but man, I wrote almost every day. I would bike to his house in the middle of the night, and we would record hip hop. And I did that for almost 2 years. That was really fun.
Nice. And were you recording on his
software? It was all his setup, like his computer, his apartment, just trying to get better.
Yeah, and you're just soaking in the new techniques and the new style.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I learned how hard rapping is. And I never played any shows. I never got good enough, but I would freestyle at parties all the time. And I really impressed some people. People did not see that coming. And I got really good at freestyling. By the time, a couple weeks before I graduated, I actually went to this studio party and freestyled in front of like 100 people. First time I did it with the whole mic and amp set up, and I did okay. I knew I wasn't going to do that great with that kind of pressure, but yeah, I definitely worked on that craft for a little bit.
That's great. And it seems to be very different, obviously, when with a microphone and an amp.
Yeah, and
you
when
sound
you're playing loud
differently.
Yeah.
It's reverberating off the room. tell me about the inner game of hearing yourself differently and how to kind of overcome those
You
nerves
mean like your vocals?
Yeah, or I guess just in general, it could apply to any instrument. But once you finally plug in and you're on stage and people are there listening and they're there to hear you, it does sound different once you're plugged in versus acoustic.
Well, it really it made me get over nerves just in general, because even when I play music that I've made recently for people now, I'm like, and then the song's not done, I'll say, oh, like, don't listen to this part, it's not done yet. And I'm like, they don't care about that. They're just listening. And so with rapping, it was to the extreme, because you're saying something that you want to say. It's your voice, which mine is not good for that. And I got to the point where, when people start out rapping and freestyling at parties for people, you start out doing it drunk. And then slowly I was like, getting to it. It's like, no, I like doing it sober. Like, let's do this. Let's actually do a good job with it. So it's funny how I'm not a rapper at all, but rapping really got me into like loving making music again.
Moving on from there, tell me about making beats and when was the first time you ever made a beat?
Yeah. So my friend Will Cornell, 1800, he had Reason, which not a lot of people have, but it's a software. I got it because he got it and he taught me maybe for a month. And then from then on, I just have been learning it myself. And so I think I was 21. I was just making like Ninth Wonder type beats, all sample based, just chopping up old songs, playing them on a MIDI, and then adding drums over it. And I did that for a long time. Yeah. So
when you say sampling songs, what are you actually sampling?
So what I'm doing is, I love sampling old music, and I take it and I make cuts in either parts I like or on the beat. And then from there, I put each of those chops on a MIDI pad, or it can even be on a keyboard if you want, and you play it like it's a drum. So you're playing...
So you convert that audio into MIDI.
Yeah.
And then you trigger it with a keyboard or a beat pad.
And that was taken directly from how Ninth Wonder does it. Ninth Wonder and DJ Premier, they are like the pioneers of that technique of playing the sample like an instrument, as opposed to sitting there on your computer and kind of figuring out where the sample sits. You literally just play it like an instrument and record yourself doing it.
And when you're playing it like an instrument, like if it was on a keyboard, for instance, is it changing key or changing note when you change?
Yeah, so what you want to do is when you chop it, you chop on the note change. So each button or key is a different note of the song, or maybe a different chord. And you're playing it, but you're playing it like a drum set because
I see.
Because when you have the song chopped out over a long keyboard, playing notes on that is not going to do anything. You play it like a drum set. Yeah.
Okay. So basically each key is a different sample.
Each key is a different section of the song. Yeah.
A section. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for explaining that.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
No one's really, I know a lot of producers out there will be like, yeah, that's obvious, but no one's really asked me like in detail how that works.
Well, I'm always curious because it could be done differently, and you could have the same sample. Makes me think of Daft Punk, and they can hit different notes. Or you can have just a different trigger.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes.
Different
that's very
notes
popular these days. It's like,
it's kind of like auto-tune.
Like taking one vocal chop and then placing it over notes. That is not what I'm referring to. This is taking every beat of the song and placing it over MIDI buttons.
And is it generally chronological, left to right?
So if I were to play the keyboard one note after another, you could hear the song play
through.
Yeah.
And each one's a bar or a
it
few
really
bars?
Depends.
Okay.
It really depends,
It's all
yeah.
unique. Great. Well, thanks for walking me through some of that.
Yeah.
Now, what software are you using when you make that?
So since day one, it's been Reason by Propellerhead. I believe they're out of Sweden. It is not visually appealing to someone looking at it for the first time, and it is not Ableton. And I'm well aware that everyone's using Ableton, but it's just what my friend, I didn't know anything when I started, so it's what my friend was using, so I used that.
You learned it, you know
Yeah.
it. That's great. And I don't think there's any wrong way to go as far as software goes. You know, you learn, you get better, you get faster, and you just got to leverage your own skill. So if that's where you were taught, that makes logical sense.
And I've tried going back to Ableton, not even back to Ableton. I've tried going to Ableton. I tried for about a month or two a couple years ago, and I'm like, yeah, I could sit here for a year and learn this, but I'm so good at Reason, like, let's just stick with it. Stick with what you know.
Absolutely. All right. Now, you've already discussed a few of them, but are there any musicians that have influenced you, at least that you know personally?
Yeah. A friend of a friend who I've hung out a few times. He even stayed at our apartment when playing in Denver, but his name is Suhan. He is one of the most unique producers I've ever heard. He samples global music, whether it be African, Asian music. It's very tribal. It's all sample based, and I love at his shows just like that tribal feeling that he gives at his shows, and he's definitely been an influence recently for me.
And you remixed one of his songs, I believe.
Yeah, I did. He put out his stems for that Ohm song. So me and a couple other people remixed it. That was a lot of fun. It was great to get my hands on those stems, just because I have no idea where he gets some of these samples. They're so unique and just so out of another continent, and so it was really great to get that tribal sound over my own sound.
You mentioned stems, and just for if you don't know out there listening, stems are parts of the song, audio layers that producers can choose to release. Now, generally, they smush them all together and make a stereo file, and that's what you listen to on your home stereo. But the stems kind of reveal a little bit more about how the artist got to the final sound. Were you able to learn anything from those stems or see?
Yeah. What I learned, I've gotten stems before, but not from like a dance track like this. What I learned was how much he chops and screws his samples. And the chops are so quick and like glitchy, and he goes all over the place with the sounds going left and right on the speakers, and then going up and down in pitches really quickly, and just how he treats. It's not just one loop after another. It's every loop is like its own unique take on the sample. It's pretty cool. It was pretty cool to see. He was trying to get the most out of his samples by chopping him and placing him differently for every part of the song.
Tell me about your first live performance. And that might go back to middle school. It might be more recent, or...
You know, I've been making music for a while, but the live thing is very new to me. It was just over a year ago, actually. It was me and a friend of mine, a local girl, She's a sorry, she's not a producer. She's a DJ, really talented. Her name is DJ Polyphony, and she invited me to Fort Greene. Is this my first show? Definitely one of them. Fort Greene's this little bar out in Globeville, which is a neighborhood in Denver. And I show up and there's a ton of people there and I get all nervous. And then I realize that all these people were here for like a work party. So by the time I go on, they're all gone. And it's me and maybe 10 or 15 people just drinking at this bar. I don't know anyone there. And I didn't tell any of my friends because I was like, let me just be on my own for a little bit. And I'm at a bar, so I can't really express myself that much. And I'm playing, it's electronic music, but it's, it's tasteful for a bar. And I go for about 45 minutes and the table, I'm kind of tall and the table is so short because it's not meant for DJing. And 45 minutes goes by. I'm supposed to go for an hour. And I look over to her and I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. Like, you can go now if you want. She's like, no, like, you're doing great. Keep going. And I was having fun, but I was like, dude, what am I like? I'm just playing for people sitting in a bar. So it was a great experience to like just get those sweats out for the first time and just have like confidence in myself to just keep playing.
These next few questions, kind of a curveball, super open-ended.
Yeah.
Make of it what you want. What is music?
Audio art.
Nice. Where do you select your samples, or how do you get them?
Oh, this wonderful thing called the internet. Back in the day, people used to dig crates, and I call it digging the internet. So I dig YouTube mostly. Yeah.
And once, not to get into too much details, but once you find the sample that you're looking for, are you sampling the whole song? Are you sampling a part of it? What do you look for?
So back in my hip hop days, I would sample full songs, chop them up and make loops out of them. Now in my,
Production days,
electronic dance music days, I go for acapellas. I love old acapellas. There's some great ones out there if you look hard enough. And I'm looking for something not too popular and something that at the same time is popular enough to have a studio acapella online.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's back up a second. Before you get those samples, when you have an idea of a song, you sit down at the computer with a blank slate. I want to make a song today.
Yeah.
Where does it start? Do you start with drums, or do you go dig in the internet?
Man, it's the sample first.
Sample first.
Because that's the key we're going to be in. That's the tempo we're going to be in. It's most likely going to determine the emotion, and people see samples and come up with all different types of tempos and keys and emotions, but it's just kind of just something that I decide based off that. And then from there it's chopped, and then I get the drums out and kind of figure that out. And then the hardest part is coming up with a fresh melody that wasn't a part of the original song.
And when you find that melody, how do you lay it down? Is it on a keyboard?
Yeah, so I start with just piano mostly. Piano is like, the basis for all music. I find the key, and I like to start with chords. Not all of my songs will, feature chords, but the chord progression will really kind of define what key you want to be in and where the song is going. And I just try to come up with simple drum loops, like with some simple poppy. This is like a pop formula, but 4 chords repeated over and over again, and then from there, that's when I explore synthesizers and try to get either dirty or pretty and go from there.
Now, those chords that you choose, are those dictated purely by the sample that you found? Or do you kind of make chords around it?
The other, because I want the sample to be in key, obviously. So yeah, I mean, I can change the pitch of the sample, but
you choose not to.
no, I will if I want it to be faster or slower or maybe less recognizable, something like that. And yeah, that's kind of how I go by it.
All right, so you've got the samples down. Now you've got your chords, and you just add some drum loops. Now I would call them drum loops.
Yeah.
Where are you getting those drums? Are these Reason instruments?
So I start out with like the template of my song. I'll just pick some Reason instruments that are built into it. And then from there, I have a little portable microphone, and I can go out and sample any percussion sound I want.
Banging on a light post.
Yeah, something like that. The actual drum set sounds in Reason are pretty good, so those I can use. And then there's also, different sample packs that you can get online. What I'd really what I've really noticed in popular production, at least in my genre, is the drums are unique. They aren't just your snare drum. There could be, someone hitting on a light post combined with a clapping sound, combined with like a xylophone sound or something like that, or maybe a snapping sound. And that's kind of what I think most producers kind of progress towards as they get better and better. They try to become more and more unique with their sounds, and it's all about that sound choice to like really, really make your song stand out and make it kind of just more natural sounding.
That's great. And I like that you discuss the layers to a sound, because I think a lot of people, beginners especially out there, when they're making music, they'll pull up the first drum kit and they'll hit the snare, and that's the snare. But you don't realize that like a clap and a sneeze and a scrape and something else in there can actually add to it in a unique way, and at least separate you so that you don't, because I hear it all the time on some radio stations. The transition music is the default stuff on GarageBand. Yeah. And I recognize it. And it's like, hey, you guys didn't change anything. Like you guys just literally drag that sample in, and everybody knows it with a Mac, and there's millions of us. So it's important to be able to change the sound and get your own sound. Now, tell me about finding your sound as Wilbow, and how do we go from Will to Wilbow?
Like my name. Okay, so I'll start with my name. Okay. In college, my freshman year in the dorms, I didn't know no one knows anyone else. So I met a friend across the hall, and his name was William. I'm just Will, but it doesn't matter. His name was Will, and we spent a lot of time together, and it was really kind of annoying and embarrassing. Me like, hi, I'm Will. Hi, I'm also Will. And so he was just calling me Wilbow Baggins, Lord of the Rings, obviously. And he was like, hey, this is Wilbow. I'm Will. This is Wilbow. And I'd be like, hi, I'm Wilbow. And so from there, our friend group just grew from there. And everyone just knew me as Wilbow. It just stuck. It really just stuck. And even before I was making music at all, everyone was just calling me Wilbow. It got to the point where I introduced myself as Wilbow. And to this day, people that I didn't even know in college are calling me that. My girlfriend calls me that, for God's sake. So I don't even know if I like the name that much.
But you don't really have a choice in the matter
I
anymore.
don't have a choice anymore. And I'm just going to stick with it. And I've learned to love it, I guess.
So how'd you come up with the spelling? Because it is French.
Yeah, I'm not French. Yeah, for a while I had it just B-O, and it just looked weird. It looked like dildo, to be honest. So
it couldn't stick.
I put the the French spelling on there, and I'm like, ooh, this actually looks kind of cool. It just visually was more appealing, so that's how I got it.
And so that's Willaux.
Beaux.
Wilbow has become a brand, and it is a music brand which you can find on SoundCloud.
Yep.
SoundCloud.com /
Wilbow.
Wilbow.
Yeah.
And Facebook?
Yep. Same thing. I believe on Facebook it's just Willbeaux Music.
Nice.
And then Spotify and Apple Music is soon to come.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
So let's get into some of the fresh tracks. So before we're talking about future tracks, you just recently released a spring mix.
Yeah.
Which is a long mix.
Right.
30 minutes, an hour.
It's an hour.
And by the way, I'm just curious as a producer and just curious how you would approach it. But tell me about the difference between making a song and making a hour mix.
Yeah, super different.
Let's break it down for the listener. So are they finished songs that you line up in order?
Yeah. So I try to put as much of my own music in there as possible. And my spring one was my first. I felt like it was who I am. It was my identity in the mix. Because before then I didn't really have too many songs, like finished songs that I felt comfortable with and I was able to put in there. So the spring one, it was really popular. It takes a love of your genre, because I'm sitting here on SoundCloud all day just listening, not even in trying to make a mix. I'm just listening just to find new songs, find new artists, and just always go find that next cool song. And so what I did was just kind of take every song that I had discovered the past few months, narrow them down to songs that kind of fit my own sound, mix them with my own songs, make a journey of emotion through it, make sure they all kind of match together well, and then come up with an hour.
Now, where does the tempo come from? Now, how do you decide that? Because if all the songs are related...
Yeah, they're not all the same tempo.
They're not the same tempo, but there must be some sort of flow between them.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a puzzle, for sure. So most of my songs are around 100 beats per minute, and so most of the mix is around 100. For that mix, I think it goes from 100 and then up to like a house beat at like 125. And then at the end, I believe it goes back down to like trap music, like 70. And so it's really just a matter of trial and error, piecing each song together, making sure like they sound compatible one after another. So it's like a chain of them sounding good one after another. And a lot of just guessing and checking and moving puzzle pieces around to get like a good overall feel of it.
So when you record that mix, is there any element of live, or is it all pre-recorded?
The way I do it is all live. Yeah. So it can get frustrating because, you make a mistake at almost every show you play. Most people don't hear it, but when you want a mix that's going to sit on your page forever, you want it clean as possible. So it got really frustrating.
Messing up on minute 45.
Yeah. And then you have to start over. Sometimes I'll make a mix, and if I mess up on minute 45, I'll just
make it
do the
44
last
minute.
15 minutes and then put them together in Reason or something.
Okay.
But for the most part, I think I have one break in that mix, but the whole thing is me live.
Continuous. So what are you using this DJ setup?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at a Pioneer. What are we looking at?
It's
Serato?
a Pioneer SX2.
SX2.
Yeah, so this thing...
We've got 2 turntables, a few beat pads.
Yeah, 4
Looks like
channels.
4 channels with faders and
my
EQ.
So this guy is pretty much the best controller you can buy before you get into CDJs. So this needs as a controller. So for your listeners out there, you need a laptop to run it.
And you just connect via USB.
Yeah.
And so you're basically sending your tracks to that and DJing your set, or I would call it a set, but a mix.
Yeah.
You're DJing the mix. Are you blending the two tracks simultaneously? So you're actually sending two songs out?
With a lot of my mixes and a lot of my sets I play live, I utilize the full four channel thing. So most of the time it's two tracks, one going back and forth. And then if I want to do kind of like a triple mashup or maybe an acapella, that's when I can use the 3 and the 4. So that can get kind of hairy, especially when you're live in front of people. So what I can do is I can go from one song into another song and have, as that song's playing, I can start a third song, whether it be an Outkast acapella or maybe an extra drum beat or something like that.
Gotcha. And are those 4 tracks, those are evolving over the mix, right? Because they're not 25-minute or 15-minute songs.
No,
right?
I'm not a very melodic DJ. Some DJs, like, they pride themselves on not being able to tell when you're going from one song to another. And that's really great. I love listening to those guys, but my style is more of a hip hop style where I don't want a song playing for more than a minute and a half, sometimes even less than a minute. So I'm going back and forth pretty quickly, always trying to keep it hype, definitely give the crowd a break, but one drop after another, I guess.
Listening to your spring mix, you had an array of samples, and you mentioned briefly that you found your favorite songs from the last couple months.
Yeah.
But there's some songs or some vocal samples from way back in the day, like Bad Boys. I don't know if you're watching Cops or something.
Yeah.
And therefore it was relevant. But how do you draw all those influences into one mix? Yeah.
So I think the key is, you always want to play something the crowd can recognize, but you don't want to do that too much. You don't want to be, a poppy club DJ. So I try to balance that. One of my favorite parts about that mix is a Jennifer Lopez instrumental. It's so great because it's like kind of a girly song, but man, I found the instrumental on YouTube. I'm like, this shit is hot. I think it's like a Timbaland beat, and I throw that in there. I got an Outkast acapella playing over a new Keys and Crates song.
So how do they fit? How do you see this ahead of time? Or do you just, as you said, trial and error, like slap them all on and mix every night?
The mashups are trial and error. Picking songs, there's a few songs that I find every month that I'm like, this is going in my next mix. This is perfect. This is my style. This is my tempo. This is good. So it's kind of combining those amazing songs with some random shit like a J-Lo instrumental and obviously my own music and using my whole library and trying to piece it all together.
All right, so let's talk about some of your other songs. Walk on Fire?
Yeah.
Walk me through some of that creative process.
Yeah, so what's great about that song, honestly, I felt like my first Wilbow song. Of course, I have songs older than that I still have online, but that was the first song where I'm like, this is me. I'm going to push this out to the world and really promote myself in this song. So a friend of mine, Dylan Montaigne, he's an amazing rapper, singer out of Denver. I sent him this beat and he was like, yep, we're doing this. So that was an old soul sample that I actually admittedly stole from Ninth Wonder. He had sampled it, maybe 1998. But I used that that cool soul sample and gave it, my own taste. It's got some like cool woodblock sounds on there, and then at the end it's got like this hard hitting synth on there. So yeah, it's fun.
When you mentioned something interesting, it just makes me kind of think. You mentioned that you stole the sample, but
yeah, but he stole it too.
Yeah, well, and who really owns it after it's out there? Like our voices. Yeah. Somebody could remix this right now.
Yeah.
And are they really stealing from us? Are they stealing our voice?
The time of when that song came out, back then that they would say it is stealing, but now in today's age, it's just a part of it, man. It's just because people say, oh, you can't take an old song and make it better. And I say, no, you can make it better. That doesn't mean that song is not good, but like,
and you should, if you can make a better song, why would you not?
Yeah. So, that song I really wanted to put on Spotify and all that, but I had people telling me it's just going to get taken down. You're going to get banned from Spotify. So it's up there on SoundCloud. Go check it out.
Nice. So just for some people out there who might not be too familiar with the legalities, but if you are sampling vocals, that is in some legal hot water, so to speak, if you sell it. But if you give it out for free, there's no profit, there's no wrongdoing. So, I mean, it's kind of weird with the music law, and it's evolving, but how do you navigate that? You've got multiple accounts, and your upcoming Spotify release, is that going to feature any vocals?
I'm glad you asked. I'm working on a song that the original version of it had an Amy Winehouse sample. It sounded so great, but I was sick of being scared of, getting taken down, and I feel like less people are on SoundCloud these days. So I hit up a friend. His name is Grayson Earhart. He's an amazing guitar player, singer, songwriter, absolute virtuoso. Just last week we finished recording his vocals and his guitar, and I'm hoping to be done with that song in maybe 3 or 4 weeks.
Great. So you guys are working in the studio together.
Yeah.
That's great. So is that a new approach for you?
No, actually.
You've done before.
Yeah. So he was very surprised how patient I was recording him. And I'm like, no, man, this is our song. Like this is part of the process. So I've been used to doing that. I'm not a vocalist at all, but from my days attempting to rap, I definitely know how it goes, and I learned Logic or Pro Tools, and the art of recording a vocalist, and then my time spent with Dylan. I'm not into just sending someone a beat. I'm not into that at all.
You want to be there in person.
I want to be there. I want to be a part of it. It should be a collaboration. I've never sold a beat to anyone. I think that's cool for like some really simple hip hop beats, but I'm not making really simple hip hop beats. So I want to make, a full fleshed out song with someone.
That's great. So he's contributing vocals and
electric guitar.
Guitar. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what is that song?
No idea.
No idea.
Yeah.
So that one's coming out soon. So listeners out there, check them out. Wilbow, No Idea, coming to Spotify, iTunes, and who knows what platforms next. Let's talk about your Aretha Franklin tribute.
Yeah. Well, I've always been obsessed with her, beginning from my mom. And I started working on that song about a week before she passed. Aretha Franklin, that is. And I was like, oh my God, I have to finish the song. I have to make it good. People will love like how timely this is, giving a tribute to her. after the news, the song was maybe halfway done, and I was like, okay, let's really do this. And it's definitely an ode to my older days of hip hop sampling. But yeah, just speed the tempo, add some big drums and some synth, and I got my new sound, I guess.
You want to talk about Chain Gang?
Sure.
All right, tell me about Chain Gang.
Yeah, so I love this song. It is definitely kind of the sound I want to go more towards, as opposed to maybe the Aretha Franklin song. But this song is awesome because I love, with my influences, like I said with Suhan, I love the tribal feel of music and live shows. So I kind of went for that with this song. I actually sampled it's called Chain Gang, because I literally sampled a chain gang.
What is a chain gang?
Yeah, so back in the day when they turned prisoners into slaves, pretty much. If you ever see the movie Oh Brother Where Art Thou, you see guys, like chopping up rocks, and they're all in a chain. They're all chained together. And so these chain gangs would make songs to the rhythm of them hitting these rocks. And so I found a couple of those and sampled this like very gritty, very southern, yet soulful, like dudes just going and like it was really fun to sample something like that. Very unique, I thought.
Started out kind of rapping, and then you started producing solo. Now you're working with more musicians. Where do you see it going in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really want to get to, I've only had experience recording either vocalists or myself in my parking garage hitting stuff. So I would really love to go out and record some unique instruments. I can find a guitar player, I can find a bass player, and saxophone has its own sound in EDM, but I really want to try to find some more just international instruments, especially percussion. I really want to, they offer some of those patches and stuff online, but I really want to get like a unique sound from that, something on the faster, dancier side, whatever dance culture another country would have. I call it tribal. That doesn't mean they're in a tribe, but it's just kind of this, it's like a way to describe it. That's definitely something I want to go more towards. I definitely want to keep my sound dancey as possible.
What advice would you give somebody starting out today?
Yeah, so I have a lot of people tell me they want to make music. And I tell them, that's great. You should go do it. I have it hanging on my wall right here. If you say something, you should do it. So say, do.
Say equals do.
Say : do. Yeah. And I have a lot of people telling me, I say, if you're going to do it, make sure you love it, because it shouldn't feel like work. And if it does, you should probably get out, because it's not a very lucrative business. Yeah. And I would say, find your own sound. Maybe start out imitating someone, but as quick as you can, don't. Because if you want to, maybe one day be known or be successful, then I think more than quality, more than your connections, it's about how unique you are. And I think original sound trumps all.
So if you don't mind elaborating on that a little bit,
Yeah.
How do you find your sound? I've heard you say your tempo earlier in this interview.
Yeah.
You know, how do you own it? You know, your sound. How do you own that tempo? How do you find that feel that really resonates internally?
It takes everyone a different amount of time. It took me 7 years, to be honest, to really find like what I want to do. I think it's about guessing and checking a lot, at least in my experience. I've tried trap, I've tried house, I've tried hip hop, I've tried everything in between. And it really was just like, hey, this song doesn't sound like other songs. Like, I really like this. Maybe this is what I should go towards. And your sound can be a combination of someone else's sound. That's okay. But as long as it's got your own twist and maybe it's a mix of some multiple artists, I think it's just a matter of time. Yeah.
Would you ever consider putting your hip hop vocals back in the mix, or is that ship sailed?
I actually found a couple
Fire tracks,
couple tracks on a
deep in a dusty hard drive.
Yeah, deep in a dusty hard drive, and I mean, I can show people, but I'm not putting that on the internet. Like, it's funny. It's funny. I was really trying, man. I mean, like I said, I was good at writing. I didn't have that swag and that soul in my voice, unfortunately.
Well, let's talk about that just a little bit. You know, when you're getting started, and like you're talking about now, like your old vocals, you know, you don't want it to be public. You don't want it to be slapped on your SoundCloud page.
No.
But at the same time, you have to go through that phase of making mediocre music to get to that next level. You know, and that first song that you make, it's not going to be the hit single on the radio. But how do you kind of evolve your sound? Are you sounding it off of friends? How do you kind of get that feedback? Or do you fall asleep, listen to it in the morning?
So, yeah, back when I did that rapping stuff, I probably would have put it on the internet if I had a chance.
Oh yeah, it was the best thing you had ever made at the time. And
I don't regret any song I've ever made. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to take it down.
Yeah.
Like, it was definitely part of the process. And usually I don't take it down. I just make the song private. So I personally will always have it there for the rest of my life to know what I was doing back then. And yeah, you ask a lot of producers, especially people that are just, you know, they're making a full song all by themselves on their computer. It's a lot of just making shitty songs and just guessing and checking and going back and redoing it. It's really part of it. Making a shitty song is the best thing you can do for yourself, because
that's a great quote. I'm going to quote you on that.
Like, there's two things. Like, you can be up till 2 a.m. making this song and you're like, okay, time to go to bed. And then you wake up the next day and you're like, all right, will this still sound good?
Yeah. What happened?
And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And you're like, wow, I just spent 6 hours of my night last night. I'm going to delete this whole thing. And it's like, that sucks, but you know, it's part of it. It really is. Over the years, I've really learned how to finish a song and how to know if it's good or not. Because in the past, you know, years ago, when I would learn a new skill, make an actual decent song, and be like, oh my God, this is so cool. I'm going to put this on SoundCloud right now. And then like 3 months later, like, dude, what the hell was that? And
you're like, oh, I forgot the ending. Or I forgot this.
So what I've been really forcing myself to do is take your time. Like, if you're tired, man, don't stop, you know? Or if you're working on the same song for 3 or 4 hours, I really think you need a break, because after that long, after hearing that same loop over and over again, you stop even hearing the song. You're not even hearing it anymore, and you don't even know if it's good or not. So I really try to either switch between songs, maybe 2 hours on this song, 2 hours on this song, or I just go to bed and I wake up, I'm like, okay, let's see how this is a good stopping point. Let's see how this sounds in the morning. And then even then, when I've completely finished the song, okay, the song's as good as good. As good as it can get. I love it. Don't finish it. Just seriously walk away for 2 weeks. Then come back. Is this done? And so I've surprised myself. I'm like, oh my God, no, I can make this better. And so it's all about stepping away for a little bit. And then if you come back after 2 weeks and you're like, yeah, I can't do anything to this, then it's done.
Then you push it out.
Yeah.
That's great. Nice. So I got kind of a two-part question for you. Last one. So first of all, when are you productive? Are you productive in the morning? Do you stay up late?
Yeah, good question. It's usually right when I wake up or before I go to bed. That's when I'm musically productive, at least.
Yeah.
During the day, I feel guilty if I'm up here making music with the sun out or something. But if I find a song and I find a slide I call it is when everything you touch is gold. Then I'll ride that out in the middle of the day if I need to. But it's usually in the morning and at nights.
So is a slide akin to being in the flow?
It's taken from when I was freestyling. When I was rapping, a slide is when you're literally rapping, and as you're rapping in your head, you're like, dude, I could go forever. I can literally go forever. So I try to ride those creative slides. It's pretty much the opposite of creator's block. Think of just the exact opposite of that.
Nice.
So if you get on the slide, you literally just sit there and you slide down and you're going.
But you are a multiple form artist. You do some visual work as well.
Yeah.
And you did your own album covers and graphics.
Yeah. So
if you could just kind of talk to me about the scrappiness, why you did it that way.
So yeah, it's spawned from my photography days. So I would kind of just use photos as cover art. I'm like, no, that's dumb. So I would have to go and hit up either a graphic design friend or someone that I'd actually have to pay. So I'm like, you know what? I'm artistic. I can do anything. So I learned, graphic design, and it's free. I literally can do exactly what I want to do, and I do it when I need it. I don't know. Yeah. It's really fun. I've definitely found a separate kind of joy for just doing album artwork, and now I'm doing all sorts of stuff.
That's great. Are there any shout outs, links, plugs that you'd like to give for our listeners out there that could find Wilbow online out there on the interwebs?
Absolutely. Halloween is coming up. I try to do 2 mixes a year, a spring mix as we talked about, and then a Halloween mix, which usually is going to be a little more lit than the spring mix, and the spring mix kind of brings it back home and then back to the Halloween mix. So this mix is definitely still my sound. I'm going to have a lot of my own music on it. An unreleased song on it, the one with Grayson Earhart. So look out for that, probably the Friday before Halloween.
Sweet.
And then, like I just said, the song, my first real single, Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud, everything. No Idea, featuring Grayson Earhart. Look out for that, and look up Grayson Earhart if you're into absolutely redonkulous acoustic guitar playing. Go check him out.
Well, Wilbow, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with our listeners. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and knowledge and music.
Thanks, Mike. It was a lot of fun.
In a crowd of faces, you're the only one I see. I'll erase the wasted nights before you met me. Must be a fantasy, my heart, it starts to spring. Your hands on me like I have never seen. All the rain
listening to the Freio Music Podcast with Michael Morahan. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. And don't forget to share this podcast everywhere. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay tuned.